As last year was Prodrive's 40th anniversary, we thought we would show our guest speaker at the 2006 Motorsport Luncheon, Dave Richards, who talks about his life in motorsport. We hope you enjoy part one of what was a very entertaining presentation.
And, our guest speaker, David Richards, I give you past president of LAC, friend of us all, Mike Wood. Welcome everybody. Can you hear me? Anyway, welcome everybody. Not last time, but the time before, we had Paddy Hopkirk and Stuart Turner, and we were sat at the table here. And I was watching Stuart, and eventually he leant across to Paddy and he said, "This is not going to work, Paddy." He said, "This lot are uncontrollable." He said, "Have you ever heard anything like this? How on earth are they going to listen to us?" And Stuart was ready for going. When they got up here, beside me, here, and you'll probably get fed up eventually. Welcome everybody to the LAC's 5-star Working Men's Club Extravaganza. Back like sardines again. 9 years ago, Tony Fall and I started this particular ball rolling with an absolutely typical Working Men's Club act. 3 years on from that event, we got a bit more sophisticated and we brought Paddy and Stuart along. Went upgrade a bit there and they were very good. And last time, I keep saying last year, 3 years ago, we brought Brian Redmond along. When Tony and I did the thing, and when Paddy and Stuart did it, we realised that we couldn't do it on our own, so we incorporated the services of one Mike Broad, who did an excellent job. And then, as I said the last time, with Brian Redmond. Now, we knew that Brian, he was a racing driver, we knew he had a multitude of stories to tell, which he did, and he stood here, and if I hadn't stopped him at that time, he'd still be here. He didn't do a bad job, did he? No. And I'm sure we toyed with this, Should we let David alone on his own here? You know, we're sure that he would do a good job, but the one overriding fact was that he would probably tend to brainwash us all as to the aspects of modern day rallying compared with what we used to know. That would never have done, would it? Not a bit. So we brought Brody back to control David. So I'm not going to go any further. So the first person on the stage, please give a big hand to Mike Broad, the unconfirmed godfather of the Acuri Cod Fillet Midland Mafia. Right. Of course, by now you'll be pleased to know that I'm not going to dominate everything that I've done in the past. Took this down as little as possible, maybe. Way back in the 70s, when Tony and I were rallying, and Roger Clark had really to get going a bit, Phil Short, Yorkshireman, would-be co-driver navigator at that time, came to me and Tony and said, "When the hell are you two going to give up and give somebody else a chance?" And I thought, I don't know, why won't? He said, "No, because there's no room, you won't let us in." At the end of 73, that's exactly what we did. We gave up. And a new class of professional co-drivers came along. Drivers you can forget. I always said that drivers were stepping stones for co-drivers. So anyway, this new class of co-drivers came along, and I have to say, they were led and it was emerged by one David Richards. I'm not here to introduce David the entrepreneur. It's pretty boring stuff anyway. Any of us could have done it, couldn't we? Seriously, I'm here to introduce David, the grassroots man. We talked about this last night, and everybody was the same accord. David, the grassroots man. David and Karen, I include the beautiful Karen here, have always been grassroots people. Absolutely. Recently I started to read his book, 3 of which are in the raffle. And he signed them, and somebody said those that are unsigned, like my own book. I've got mine on sale. Those that are unsigned are worth a lot more. Early on in the book, it's heavy stuff is this, David, I've only got here nothing. Early on the book, he said he watched the RAC rallies of the 1960s. He used to live in Ruthin, am I right there? Yeah. And he used to go and watch the RAC in rally during those 60s years. And the chances are, if he was lucky and if we got that far, he must have seen Fallen Eye. He didn't have to get that far. And he must have thought, well, there's nothing much to beat here, I better get on to this one. So like me, the young David Richards started by driving. We all aspired to be a driver, but like me, he banked the family car, and that was that, so he decided navigating was both safer for him and the family car, and a lot cheaper. We have something in common. We both finished up as navigators. As I said, we have something in common because at one time we both shared the same driver, and we were lucky there. And there's another one guy, Mike Broad as well. We both had as our driver the great Tony Pond, who was brilliant, and so we have that. As a yes, thank you. So, but today after Pondy, David went on to much greater things and teamed up with Harry Vatanen in a Works Ford, whereby they went on to win the 1968 Rally World Championship. I think this is a first for the LAC because I don't think they've had a world champion here before, and we have, so I'm pleased about that. I could go on now as to how he created Prodrive, how he's going to enter his own team in Formula 1 in 2008, but I promised I wouldn't dominate the show, and I'm going to let Michael Broad get all that out of him. 3 years ago, Brian Redman flew in from Florida to be with us. And that was a fair distance. 24 hours ago, David Richards and Karen were in Bahrain. They were there to watch a race where David has a team there. It's a race, it's an Australian championship race, V8 supercar, which David has a team there. And I have to say that it was worthwhile his trip to Bahrain because I think you won, didn't you? Very good. So, as I say, he was there. I got an email from him saying that Karen and I will be setting off shortly after midnight and hope to see you at lunchtime. So there was a big question mark, and you, Mr. Taylor, preempted me when I was going to talk about Plan B, but you're doing that. And so here we are. One wagger here mentioned to me, is the LAC paying for the fuel bill? What a silly question. I'm not going to go any further. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you David Richards, CBE. Thank you.
Are we plugged in? Yes. Everybody here is at the back. Thanks, Woody. That's half my speech gone as well.
I have to start by telling you that, you know, Woody talks about watching RAC rallies. I did watch Tony and Mike in the RAC rally, and I watched them in a 240Z all those years ago. But, you know, the funniest part of watching them was not they competing on the rally, was when after they had the accident, after they had the accident, and all the whole sort of Japanese brigade turned up to watch this car being extracted from a forest near Betsincoid, if I remember correctly. It was a long way down the slope. They winched it right up, and the winch broke. The car was intact at that point in time. It completely destroyed itself as it went down the hillside again. And the two of them were rolling around laughing. The Japanese were completely sort of amused by this scene. It's a true story.
David, welcome. David Richards, CBE. Let's start on that one, because that must have been quite an occasion. How do they do this? I mean, do they phone you up and say, hey, Dave, do you want a CB? Or do they say, hey, Dave, have you got some money?
That's an interesting one.
So how do they do it? I mean, letter, phone?
Yeah, you sort of hear about these things and so on. I guess it's, there are lots of people far more deserving than myself in these situations, unsung heroes around motor clubs around the world who do so much work, and it's, I suppose, it's a bit unfortunate that the higher profile people get these awards and the people that do all the work in motor clubs. I've got a little motor club in North Wales that I'm still remain president of to this day, and we're going to have our first 40th anniversary in January. And I know some of the characters there and the hours they put in. So originally Romeoing off the sort of the newsletter and all.
When you got that phone call, is it a phone call or a letter?
I got a telephone call, I think.
Right. And you put it down and you go, wow.
You do, I suppose. Yeah.
And then do they say he mustn't say anything?
Yeah, they do.
So did you say anything to Karen?
No, I told Karen. I told Karen everything. I didn't tell the kids. No, I didn't tell the kids. No, and we were away at New Year and we sat down the night before and told the kids.
So how was Elizabeth when you went to see her?
She was alright. I think Yeah. I reminded him about sort of rallies and about motorsport.
Was he up to date?
Not particularly, no.
Well, I mean, is that the epitome of things?
No,
that's just sort of baggage, is it?
I wouldn't say that, but it's no. I think there are lots of other things.
To be recognised, I mean, you're recognised within the sport anyway, but you're recognised by people outside the sport. Actually, it adds to the sport.
I think that's probably the point, that it actually recognises the sport, not you as an individual. And I think it's more important. It's more important doing things like sort of spending time with friends at motor clubs who've sort of done all their work over the years.
So when you were 10 and you were at primary school and somebody comes along and says, David, what would you like to be?
I can't remember.
No, well, it's an age thing, Chuck. What would you like to be when you're grown up? Was any of what you've done actually in your vision when you were a kid or not?
No, not really at all. I don't suppose these things evolve. I watch my young son now. My young son is sitting at home today and he's 12 years old, the youngest. And he is over the moon. He's absolutely over the moon because at the company we get lots of cars given to us for fire extinguisher practice. They give us I don't know where they come from, but we have fire extinguisher practice back at the factory. But he's got an agreement with the health and safety guy that he gets them first. If they're anything like mobile, he has them to drive around him. And he says, you can't believe what they're giving me now. And he says, what's it? It's an invalid carriage. He says, driving it around the fields. This morning he showed me this thing. He's so proud of it. He's thrashing around sideways, handbrake to his grandmother in the back. And so so I guess I felt probably the same way when I was about 10 years old, 12 years old.
I mean, Mike's touched on it. You say that you went to Clickinog and you saw the rally and that sort of. Did that change the life? Was that the first time you got an inkling?
Well, there's a story about that because my parents took me up to Clickinog when I was probably about 12, 13 years old. I took photographs. I loved photography at the time. And I took photographs. I stayed. And you remember the RAC rally in those days? The Land Rovers came at the back. The Army came right at the very back.
We needed them.
Yeah. I waited till the Land Rovers. Nowadays, I stayed for the first 10 cars to go home. But I took the photographs of the Land Rovers and I said, that's great fun. But the place I stood on that corner, and I remember the very spot I stood, was the very last corner in the long straight of Clickinog. And many years later, in 1981 with Ari, that was the very last corner of was the very last rally I ever did when we won the World Championship, and it was a very poignant moment.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing. So you're in Ruthin. You've got a few photos of rally. There's a car club in Ruthin. Presumably, you joined it.
Clubville Motor Club, yeah.
So Mum gave you a car to go rallying.
No,
driving,
she
did
didn't.
you?
She didn't. God, no, she gave me the car to go to the youth club. my brother was a little bit younger than I. We used to get in her car, and it was a Ford Zodiac. We got in this car and we drove it down the lane. We got a few hundred yards down the lane, we got out and we got under the dashboard and disconnected the speedo. Because she always used to check the speedo before we went out. She knew how far the youth club was after all. And off we went to the local motor club and we do a 12-car rally. How we did it without a speedo, I still don't understand, but we did it. And we came back again and we'd just been out to youth club for the evening and that was fine. Until one night, we took the whole side of the car out of the bridge, completely the whole side out. My brother could only have been 16 at the time or something like that. And we didn't know what to do, so we parked it up at home alongside the hedge. And it was 11 o'clock the next morning, my father came and asked what the hell we'd been up to in my mother's car.
So you then went on to become a co-driver rather than a driver. Did you recognise fairly quickly you weren't going to make this drive?
It was very clear in early days that I wasn't cut out for the driving bit, you know. So
but there were some reasonably good guys in that Northern area, wasn't there? Ian Hughes was around in a few
it was all the days of road rallying, and interesting, as I came up here now, I thought about it, and you know, the Lancashire lot were always really into the road rally, the Morecambe Car Club and all the rest of it, they were really big in the road rallies in those days.
Yeah.
And it was the other side of the Pennines were the stage guys, and Tony Drummond and all the Yorkshire crowd. And I did loads of road rallies in the early days in Wales.
But you've always been known as a person that plans things. You've got to, because the first time you ever came into contact with me was about October '73. And just to show how much you sort of think about things, you phoned me up. I didn't know who you were. I got a travel agency, if you remember, in the Midlands. And you said you wanted to come and see me. And you were there the following day for a pint at Whiteheath at Blackheath. I remember it vividly. And you went through, you said to me that you wanted to go and do the national championship next year. And who do you think I should be driving with? And I thought, gosh. I mean, it didn't happen like that nowadays. I mean, you waited for the phone to come from the driver that was going to ask you. You turned it around on the other way. You were already looking for somebody to give you some success. So, a few years later, I was talking to Phil Short, and you did with him. And you did with Chris Lord, and you did with a couple of others. So you must have gone around people that you thought were knowledgeable. And then was Drummond the key factor that came out of all our
I've still got a few of these letters at home, and I wrote these letters. I wasn't very good at English at school, so how the hell I wrote the letters, I don't know, but I did. I got to writing these long letters to people, and I got one letter which I went to the extent of translating to Finnish. It was written to Pentiauricola. I said, I really would like to drive for you. And I've got the replies as well. Have you ever read the Henry Root letters?
No.
The Henry Root letters, where they write these ridiculous letters to people. Say, I enclose a £5 note so you'll reply to me. And I wrote all these letters. I wrote them to everybody. And I've got a lot of the replies. And I won't embarrass the people who wrote back to me, but they wrote back to me pretty disdaining responses, actually. So.
But you got Drummond out of that.
Yeah, I met some great people.
But how did you just phone Tony up and sort of say, look, I want to do the national championship next year?
Yeah, I don't know how the hell it happened, but Tony couldn't speak very good English.
Well, quite, yeah.
It's Yorkshire. Yeah. He's very effective because I'm from Wales. Yeah. And in fact, if I look at my life, I've gone through with Harry Vasson. He didn't speak a word of English when he came to England. But I think that must be the key.
You always get the problem when you were a foreign driver, and I had it a lot when I was with sort of the Lampinans and the Royals of the world, that you had to sort of do the Finglish or the English with a German accent. Very,
my kids sort of taught me, said, Dad, you're speaking some foreign English to us.
And you knew damn well when somebody phoned on the phone, the kids had come down and said, can you speak English again?
Yeah, exactly.
But it was a way of communicating in the car, wasn't it?
Yeah, you know, there was some... Well, Tony Drummond was very different. I got up to his house one day, you know, I went to his house in Yorkshire, he lived in York, just outside York, and we're doing a national rally. We're actually leading the national championship, and we're doing quite well. And I turned up at his house, and his wife said he's a bit quiet. He's on the sofa, in fact he's a bit concussed. I said, a bit concussed? Tony ran a scrapyard in York. And I said, what the hell's wrong? We're doing a rally in 12 hours starting tomorrow morning. He said, there was a car that turned up and it wasn't quite written off, so he drove it into the side of the barn. Just to complete the job. And there he was sitting on the sofa completely.
That was German.
But that was German.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the final round of that championship, we won the final round of the championship. It was in the Tour of Epent. We did the Tour of Epent and it was in the fog. Tony Fouch was the real expert in Epent. He was so quick you can't believe over it. He knew every inch of it. We'd never been there in our lives before. I'd been had a look round, but I didn't know much about the place. So we started number one and he started behind us. So look, the only answer, the only way to succeed here is let him overtake us and try and hang on to his taillights. We'll just follow him through the fog. Tony said, all right, if you say that's the way to do it, we'll do it. So we let him overtake us, he hung onto his taillights. I just shut up, I didn't say a word, I just sat there and kept quiet. We followed his taillights, and we did actually, we beat Paul Faulkner and we won the championship. A week later, we get a copy of the highway code through the post with driving in fog underlined.
The following year after that, you actually met two guys that changed your rallying world quite a lot, which was Pond and Vatman,
Oh, yeah.
virtually the same time.
Yeah,
Do
you're
you
right.
remember we were down in
Yeah.
Wales when this guy Vatman arrived in that
Yeah.
Peter Bowler, which you didn't co-drive for, but you did in the Scottish.
Yeah.
Did you get hold of him down in Wales and sort of say something?
I met him in Wales and I just liked the guy.
Yeah.
You know, we got on well together. We come from a similar background. Though, you know, he comes from right in the Russian border of Finland. And, but he was a great character. Even in those days, you spotted straight away he was an interesting guy. And so he come and stay with us. I've been in North Wales for a while. He came to stay in my parents' house. And in the guest room of my parents' wardrobe were still stickers that he stuck in the wardrobe there. And we became great pals. And
That helped later, didn't it?
still to this day, you know, he'll ring me up. Yeah, I think he rang me last week, and we get together quite regularly. His kids are the same age.
So I mean, skipping along years and years and years, was it one of the most difficult things you had to do when you told Harry you couldn't continue in the Super Inter?
You know, life has its ups and downs in relationships. And I think the most important thing is to be honest with people.
Yeah.
And you know, he and I sort of had our fallings out when we were co-driving. I was co-driving for him. We had problems, and then he drove for me. And I had to sit down with him and say, look, Harry, you know, I've got this young Scot. And this young Scot, I think, is going to be very good, and I can't sort of see that, you know, I think you've got to call a day to this. And it was tough. It was very tough, because we were great pals.
But you're all right now, aren't you?
We went round a full circle, and he appreciates it now. He's a European MP, surprisingly enough, for France.
Well, he actually said to me, his ambition now is to become president of Finland or something.
Well, I think, you know, I wouldn't rule anything out as far as Harry's concerned, because he's, in fact, going back to that original Scottish rally, we won
You did,
driver
absolutely,
of
because the car fell to pieces.
The dangerous bit was the stones hitting us inside the car from through the floor, because it was knackered, it was totally knackered. And to be honest, the end of the event, we went back to home in it with Karen sitting in the back. She was sitting in the roll cage in the back, the three of us went home in it. But he won a gallon of scotch. And he didn't drink at all. So he said, I'll take it home with me, I'll give it to my mother, I'll put it at home. And we've been looking for it for the last 20 years, we can't find it. We don't know where it went to. Somebody in Finland drank it, but not us.
Pondy, there's an enigma.
Yeah,
I mean, Tony Pond, I went with him, you went with him, we've been with him, was, I thought, a fairly complete driver. He was as good on tarmac as he was on gravel.
he was the best British driver that was never world champion. He should have been world champion. You know, it's like so many of us in life. He did not have the self-confidence. He lacked that. He had, if I remember, he had polio as a child, and he just didn't have that last little bit that sort of gave him that confidence to say, I can do this. And very sad, because
you had some good events.
we won the Tour of Britain together. We did lots of things together. And
but you split from him. Was it because he wanted to stay at British Leyland with the TRs?
yeah,
You thought that's a bit of a dead end, is it?
yeah, I had the deal with Fiat lined up for him. I went to Fiat and I spoke to Daniel Odetto, who was running Fiat at the time, and said, Tony, we have to come out of this situation. If we want to win the World Championship, we must be in this team. Fiat were winning everything, and the 131 Mia Fiore was coming along there. And I said, I got the arrangement with Odetto, we had the contract lined up, and Tony said, I won't drive a left-hand drive car. And Tony said, I said, but you can do this.
Yeah.
And he said, no, it's too risky.
Of English.
Too risky. I won't do it. And he would have been world champion.
Yeah.
There is no question. He would have gone on from there to be world
I'm
champion.
pleased to hear that, because I thought that. Now, you just sort of touched on something else there. You're what, 24, 25 when all this is going on the Fiat. Now, not many young co-drivers are already plotting ahead. You've got Mr. Pond there, and you're already talking to Ardetto. At 24, that takes a bit, because I mean, you got quite far up the tree. You got Fiat. I remember that, because you continued rallying with the likes of Billy and Dawson and what have you. You got 2 balls in the air then, because you've got Fiat, because you phoned me up and I had to do Welsh and Scottish for you, because you couldn't have what was it, Single Island. But not only that, you then got 2 guys called Marco Wallane and Timo Salonen, and they're not exactly sort of ordinary drivers, are
I
they?
look back and with amazement, at 24 years old, they said to me, you can be the team manager of the team. And then not only that, but Marco Len's your driver. And Timo Salanen's your driver. I thought, well, this is quite an interesting experience. And
Well, Salonen wasn't quite as famous as he would be in those days. He was coming through. Marco was the man. He was the man, because I remember.
He didn't speak English either.
No. And he wanted
My
to
life's gone through. Do you speak English?
But I'm just trying to demonstrate, that even then, at that age, you've got many things rumbling around. I was just happy to be a co-driver. I wasn't thinking about too many other things apart from what the next event was going to be. But you'd already got sort of plans of consultancy and team management and all this type of thing. Where's that come from? You get a road boredom threshold or something.
Yeah, you're probably right. You're restless.
Yeah.
Harry and
Liverpool.
it's my table. You're quite right, Mike. I don't know. It's just restlessness. I suppose you're. And I suppose that can be an advantage, and it can be a disadvantage.
It wasn't terribly successful on the co-driving front at that time. I mean, I
had
got
a
a few,
desperate time.
few drives, but the key was then, I suppose, getting Rothmans involved. How did you, Rothmans was the key to the end of the rallying career.
There was an interesting story about this. I realised that sponsorship at that time was the key to what I realised, but I just thought that maybe if we could get commercial sponsors in, maybe that would change things. And I started going around talking to people. And I went around and I met these people from Rothmans. I knocked on the door and I said, look, if any chance, I think I've got some contacts in this motor racing business rally. I think we could get the World Championship, we could sort of get great publicity, and would you like to sponsor it? Well, I got shown the door at that point, but nonetheless I tried, and I remember meeting that. But nonetheless, the phone went about a month later. And it's a great irony because I've been back living this period just in the last week, because the phone went a week later, and I got a call and said, look, we'd like to meet you because we've got a job for you. And it's not, we don't want to sponsor you the contract, this idea you came up with, but we've got a rally in Kuwait, and we'd like you to organise it, and we'd like some help with it. I said, well, when is it? It's 10 days' time. I said, normally these things need a little preparation, and it seems a little unusual to call me now, but nonetheless, I'm quite happy to get on the plane. But who was organising it before? I said, it was a Lebanese fellow who's just been shot. So I got on a plane, I went there, and that's how the Rothman sponsorship started. And it started by me organising events for them in the Middle East, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, everywhere. And I've just been around to visit great old friends of mine in the last week while I was out there. And that led me to sort of say, look, why don't we do the World Championship? And I've got this young chap, Harry Vanson, who I think will be great. And they put the money up. And when I rang Harry. I said, Harry, I've got this sponsorship. What do you think? He said, oh, I don't know, sure, I'm not quite sure. I said, look, Harry, just get real here. Ford are about to kick you out. You crashed so many cars last year, they can't afford to keep you in the team. And they just, literally, Peter Ashcroft, who was running the team at the time, said to me, we can't afford this guy. He smashes them every weekend, and we just can't keep going. Yeah.
And they actually took it up for 1 year only, didn't it?
It was, no, we carried on for a little while after that. That was the initial sponsorship. Then it moved to David Sutton.
So, I mean, they finished, but was it you that got Sutty? Or
sorry. No, the Ford, well, Ford actually stopped. That was, as is often the case with Ford, they sort of up and down, you never know whether they're going to be in or out. And they stopped. They said, when the World Championship was stopped, Oh, they didn't win that year, as it happened. Sorry, and we moved the sponsorship to David Sutton.
He must have thought it was Christmas.
No, it was a tricky time for David. He did an incredible. David has always spent more money than he's ever earned.
Exactly.
And it's always and he's a lovely guy, and he's so full of it. But and we won the World Championship in that year in '81. And honestly, if you look back, there was no way in this world it should have happened, but it did. And the main opposition was Guy Franklin in a Citroën, and Jean Todt as the co-driver, who's now gone on to sort of Ferrari fame, in the co-driver's seat at Peugeot.
But isn't that amazing that the rally people always seem to move on? You know, you've got Jean Todt there, you've got Franklin there, you're coming up from a rallying background. There's a lot of rally people, specifically co-drivers. Franklin's the odd one out that actually comes through to be quite decent business people.
Yeah. We can't afford to retire from it.
Let's just delve on the before we finish on the rallying bit, really, for your competition career with Harry, because as you said, you know, he used to write cars up for fun. I mean, you ever get hurt?
No, you know, the only time I've ever been hurt in a rally car was with a racing driver.
Yeah,
I did the Tour of Epping years later with Tom Price, who comes from Ruthin in North Wales. Tom was very famous in Formula One at those days, and he was the son of the local police sergeant, and great guy. And he said to me, "Let's do a rally together." And I said, "So I borrowed a Lancia Stratus, as one does." So I went around the guy and said, "You got a Lancia Stratus rally car I could use for the weekend."
Check the flag.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah, of course you can." So off we went, and Tom was ever so quick for the first 10 miles. And Brands Hatch, if you turn into sort of say cops or is it clearways or something like that, the surface is quite consistent. You don't have sheep shit all over the road, and that's what happened. Coming down the hill, and I said, "Tom, this is a little bit too quick." And we went into the river anyway, and we ended our event in the river. But Tom still went on that afternoon, took the car up to show the fans up in North Wales, and we did a couple of forest stages. And very sad he died the following year, but it's such a lovely fella.
Button and then come back with it. I mean, you won 1,000 Lakes, that must have been special.
Winning
for
1,000 Lakes is special.
Yeah.
I suppose that stands out as the event to win.
Yeah.
But Harry's a bit of an enigma because he I don't know, he had this sort of attention span deficit that, you know, they talk about with kids these days, but he never work it out. You know, we'd sit down afterwards after we had a big shunt. He said, "What happened there?" I said, "I have no idea." We had some extraordinary big shunts, and I could look at it. There were two that stand in my memory more than most, and there was one where we're going down a hillside and we're on the Monte Carlo rally. I've arranged all the sponsorship for this car, and I'd sort of got the guy, this guy in Monaco, a very wealthy guy, said, "I want to do a Monte Carlo rally. I'll buy one car, give another car to you. We'll be one team, and all the rest of it." And we're doing quite well, but we crash off the side of a mountain and go upside down, and we drop backwards into a ravine. And it was a really horrendous one. It was a long way down. But we eventually climbed back up onto the road, and then notched the next car go past us, number 23 or whatever it was, and so I said, "Oh God, it's the sponsors coming next car, we better hide." so we hid, so they didn't know it was us, we passed off. And then later that year, we're in Portugal, and we're in the team and with Hannah Mikula, I think, and we come down the hillside, and you know that horrible feeling, anyone's been in one of these rally cars on gravel tyres and on a tarmac road, and they lock up. And when they lock up, there's this zinging feeling, and you know you're going to have a big shunt, and you just know it's going to happen. So you close up all the no-pace notes, and you think, well, this is just inevitable. We had so many shunts that year. Ford were about to fire us. They were fed up with the crash cars. And so we smashed through the trees, went off backwards, all the rest of it. And everything came to a halt, and there's glass everywhere. And Harry is just staring in the rearview mirror. And I looked across, he's staring in the rearview, and he said, "I can see the bonnet in the rearview mirror. It's an enormous crash. It's an enormous crash." The window of the car, get the knock on the window. Hannah Mikula, our teammate, knocks the window. We crashed on top of him. But the whole year was about, there's no purpose in finishing second. There's just no purpose in this. If we can't win, we might as well crash. So that's how it went on. Every event, it went from one accident to a success to a success. And you know what? There is one person who will stick in my mind forever. And this is in Italy, in San Remo. And we were not quite leading the rally. We were very closely behind Michelle Mouton, the best woman driver there's ever been. Maybe Pat Moss, but Michelle for me was the hero. And she was leading the event. And Harry said, I'm not going to let a woman beat me. So he said, we went into the final night of San Remo, perhaps half a minute behind her. And he said, look, we'll give it a crack. We're going to go flat out for the first half of the night. And if we can't get into the lead, remember, we're fighting for the World Championship. We could have the World Championship in our hands at that point in time, with only 1 or 2 rounds to go, maybe. And he said, we'll go for it. But anyway, the inevitable happened. We shunted the car and we finished 8th. And we went to the prize giving, which is down in the seafront in San Remo. And as we went up and got the awards, this little Italian man comes up to us afterwards, kisses us, puts his arms around us. You are sporting heroes because you had everything in your hands, but you went for the win and you wanted to be successful. And that, to me, epitomises what sport's about. You know, you don't just hang around and try and finish second. You try and win. And to me, Ari epitomises that. And he's just a wonderful guy.
Good. But he finished you off. I mean, you decided at the end of that. No, it wasn't quite right. Rally-wise, though. At the end of that year, you wanted to carry on with Mercedes, if I remember.
No, there was a story to that. There's a story to that. That year was 81, and Harry had Harry. If you're in Finland, you live in Finland, you cannot get your passport renewed at 30 years of age unless you've been in the army. So you've got to do national service. So Harry said to me, "You can't believe this. I've got to do national service. I've got to be in the damned army." I said, all right, well, don't worry, it'll be all right. He said, but they're all full of 16-year-old squaddies, and I've got to be there, and I've got to be locked up in the back. Anyway, he said, went off to the army. He said, I should not so bad here. But after a little while, he found it a bit tedious, and he said, when I offered an opportunity to go to Mercedes to get more drives, he turned around and said, honestly, just take anything to get me out to this place, because we're in the sports division, and he could get out if he had an official contract to use some rallies. And so Walter Roll was our teammate at the time. He told Mercedes-Benz, would you believe it? He told the directors of Mercedes-Benz the cocktail party, they didn't have a hope of hell of winning anything because their car was crap. So they cancelled the contract the next day. But having said that, we got paid, and I've had Mercedes at a reasonable price ever since.
Yeah, good, yeah, I must admit. So you called a halt at the age of, what were you, 28, 30, something like that, which is a bit early.
Yeah, but you know, we had some pretty hairy moments. I had a young family. It was pretty. We were sort of living on the edge, and you know.
Did you get a competition licence back then?
No, I didn't. I've kept it to this day, but it was proven 2 years later when Harry nearly lost his life in Argentina, and you know, I look back on that and I could have been in the car with him, and he survived, thank God, but...
he was still going for it back then, wasn't he? I mean, that year that he had the accident was the year, I think, with Terry, where Terry booked him in very early on Monte Carlo, 8 minutes early, and he got it back and won the race.
He won everything. He was the fastest driver of all time in pure speed, but he did have some big accidents, and it brought it home to me when he nearly died that time.
Yeah. So then was his full-time business then?
Yeah.
Is that a bit daunting?
It seemed less obvious to me that that's what we were going to do.
And you started at home, didn't you?
I started with an old pal of mine who was, Ian Parry, who I remember well, and he and I just had a briefcase, and we lived in the back room. We ended up the kids' playroom. We started there, and that's what we did.
Calling in sort of the Rothmans and the Middle East contracts to sort of get yourself going, was that the basis of it?
Well, Rothmans had decided, when I stopped, I went to see the boss of Rothmans. I said, look, you've sponsored me for the last few years now. We've been quite successful. You know, any chance that you give me some real employment now, we could get a proper job. They said, well, funny you should say that. We just started a Formula One team. Would you like to supervise the whole Formula One team program for us? And this was in 82, 83. I said, oh, this sounds interesting. So I went to look at this and oh my God, this is unbelievable. I just can't believe how wrong people can get it. And the ultimate situation was we turned up at Monte Carlo and they invited guests from all over the world. They came from the Middle East, they came from America, they came from everywhere. And they had the whole of the sort of terrace at the Hotel de Paris there for everyone to get to. And we turned up there, and I got there and I knew things weren't going to be good. I just had this feeling, I had this sixth sense. I got there and I saw the managing director had had rather too many glasses of champagne before I arrived. And the whole team had failed to qualify at Monte Carlo. And we had about 1,000 guests there.
No cars?
And no cars at all. So my job was to fire the team and sort the whole problem out. So I had some sort of early experiences of sorting these issues out.
That's amazing, because I wonder where the F1, I mean, you've really been with F1 all the way through, on and off.
Off and on. Motorsport crosses over. You know, if you talk to people in this room, there are sort of people who've done rallies, who've done car trials, who've done sort of bit of racing and different things, and you meet them and they cross over everywhere. And the skill sets are not dissimilar.
No, but actually the people, aren't they? Isn't there a different person within F1 than there is to rally?
There is. I just, be quite blunt about it. The F1 people are sort of very, very cutthroat, and it's very, very political, and the rallying people are far more friendly.
They're not nice people, then.
I didn't say that, you said that.
Let's go on to, I mean, you've got yourself going, you're at Marsh Gibbon, it's get quite busy, and then you pop off to Silverstone, don't you, to
I set
a bit bigger.
I set up a rally team. I just decided this was the opportunity. I went to Rocky and said, why don't we do a rally team together? I'll get Porsche to cars to come with us. And we set up our rally operation, and there were 14 of us in those days, I think, when we sat around the lunch table chatting to each other, and they were great days. And of the 14 days, it's interesting enough that I think somebody told me the other day 11 of them still work in Prodrive, and I'm still so friendly with the other three who are around the back. It's a people business.
You're known for that. You've got a skill of finding the right people and giving them the right
it's just
freedom to get on with it.
It's just about respecting people and being friends
but
with people.
I mean, listen, luck was arrived just now then.
Yeah, David came along and he's still a great pal, lives in the next village to me now.
And did you see, I mean, he was a mechanic with sort of me for a bit just before he came over to you. And I remember him well. I mean, he technically fantastic. What did you see in Lappy then at that time? But he's been with you and he's now F1 man, isn't he?
Well, he's working with me on various projects. He's a bit of a free spirit, if you like. I think the great thing about seeing people and dealing with people is not about pigeonholing them into a role, but actually seeing that they have a contribution to make and just making a sort of rather. Our organisation changes every minute, and if I come into work on Monday morning, they're never quite sure what we're going to do next, and we move people around and we change things because people are people, and people want to do different things, and people have problems in their lives and want to have a step out for a while. They're feeling on great form and they want to do something very competitive, and the organisation must adapt to that. And I think it's important that great teams are responsive to the people that are part of them and make them great teams.
But you've got to do that because you physically can't do everything, can you?
No, you can't. It's totally
the amount of jobs you've got, the balls in the air at the moment, you've got to have that trust. And Lappy was the chap that you gave the first project you had with the Porsches. If you remember, he had reorganised. I remember doing that. I mean, the bag of rubbish they sent you to for an event, cars to start.
They sent a Porsche. We thought, who do you go to if you want a new rally car? Let's go to Porsche. They must know what they're talking about. And they sent us this car across. And the last couple of days, I've been in the Middle East, and I went to see a great pal of mine inside Al-Hajri, who won the Middle East Championship for us many years. A lovely fellow, and we reminisced over a lot of time there. And he reminded me of the first car that went out to the Middle East, and it broke in half. It broke in half. This brand new Porsche broke in half on the first day of this rally. We cobbled it together, we kept it going. We actually won the event, but we had to re-engineer the whole car as a result of that. And David got his first blooding at that stage.
But really, Porsche weren't that interested in rally. You made them interested in rallying, and then what did they just sort of?
We tried.
Yeah. Basically, it wasn't the best car to go rally in, so you picked your right events, and you actually got a few results out of it.
Yeah, we did very well on the asphalt. Henry Toivonen, of course, drove for us in those days. Henry was one of those exceptional talents who just stood out from the crowd.
Again, personality.
I just stood out. He
I
just
mean, he got the talent, but he'd also got the personality.
he had everything going for him, and he was an extraordinary guy.
If you enjoyed Dave Richards, keep an eye out for part 2. Coming very soon.